What is the biggest scam you've ever seen? This scam is not only the biggest scam I have ever seen, but one of the saddest too. A couple years ago I traveled to Germany for a month on an exchange program with my school. The big trip that we made outside of Germany as a class was to Paris for a few days. Paris was an interesting city with untouched history, and many beautiful examples of art and architecture. However, the big attractions were basically just massive tourist traps. You had to watch for pickpockets, and if you weren't making sure you were not getting robbed, you had to make sure you were not having a sale forced on you by these guys. What they were selling was cheap little keychains that were cheaply made, and overpriced, but this is not the scam I am mentioning today. The good thing about being from Canada, is having French as a second language, and as much as I hated taking it in school, there were people in my class who are fluent because of the school system, or because they grew up in a French-speaking home. My friends Matt, Andrew and I were getting sick of these people pushing cheap little models, keychains and gadgets on us, so we decided to ask one of the guys about how much he is making off each sale, and our conversation shifted to the gentleman's life, and how he got to where he was today. As I hinted to earlier, I don't speak French very well, so all I have is what Matt and Andrew explained to me later, but his story goes something like this. The guy's name was something like David. David grew up in a family with 3 brothers, and while his family wasn't wealthy, they had enough to send their kids to school for an education when they were young. David was one of the brightest in his class, and when he finished school, he really wanted to go to a university to become a doctor, but his parents did not have enough money for such an investment. David was approached, along with 20-some-odd young men from his town, by a white Parisian who told him that he would bring them from Mali to France for school, and he would pay for their tuition, as long as they worked for him for a year in France. This seemed like a good deal to David at the time. He was getting a job in France, his education, and it was being paid for by this nice gentleman and the organization he represented. He and the 20 others who accepted the offer were excited when they got on a truck which brought them onto a boat in the Mediterranean. While on board, they asked the guy in charge, "When will we get our visas to be students here in France?" To which they were told, "Oh, don't worry, we will get them soon. The paperwork is being finished in Paris right now." Upon arrival in Paris, it soon became apparent what was really going on. The students were given a cot in a low-income, tightly packed housing unit, and the 20-odd students were told that they were going to sell little souvenirs at popular tourist attractions for a year until their debts for the transportation and housing was paid. David was then stuck. He was an illegal immigrant in France, with a daily quota impossible to reach, paying a debt that was ultimately unpayable. David had been selling trinkets when we met him for just under 2 years. He doesn't have much contact with his family, maybe twice a year, and he is no closer to paying his debts to his employers when we meet him than from when he first arrived. He told us, "I am making some money on the side." He admitted he short-changed people, or overcharged some sales, pocketing the extra for the opportunity which, he calculated, would take another 4 years, then he would finally be free to actually do something with his life. This is the biggest scam I have ever seen. Human trafficking right under the nose of the not-so-ignorant police and politicians of Paris. This was 2 years ago now, and I still catch myself wondering how close David is to his goal of becoming a doctor.